Welcome to our channel. We're back with another bone-chilling horror story that will have you on the edge of your seat. Sit tight as we delve into a tale of love, loss, and terror. Let's begin. In the northern hills of Wyoming, nestled between dark, rolling forests and a forgotten road, lies the small town of Dry Creek. With a population barely scraping 500, the town felt frozen in time. Many of its residents were older, having lived there for generations, passing down their traditions, stories, and superstitions. Dry Creek was known for its strange history. Outsiders rarely visited, and the ones who did always left with a story of something eerie they couldn't quite explain. Rumors surrounded Dry Creek, legends of ghostly apparitions, mysterious disappearances, and demonic possessions. But one legend stood out above all others: the tale of the haunted farmhouse on the outskirts of town. No one had lived there for decades, and those who dared to step foot on the property claimed to feel a dark presence, as if something evil resided within its walls. Some said it was the devil himself who took refuge in that house, while others believed a demon had made the house its home long ago, preying on anyone foolish enough to enter. This was the town where Daniel Hayes grew up. Despite the rumors and strange occurrences, Dry Creek had always felt like home to him. He was a simple man, running a local pub in a nearby town and living a quiet life. For years, he had been single, focusing on his business. But that all changed when he met Emily. Daniel and Emily's love story was a whirlwind. They met at a party, hit it off immediately, and within a month, they were inseparable. Emily was everything Daniel had ever dreamed of. She was kind, beautiful, and they shared a deep connection. After just a few weeks of dating, Daniel proposed, and they decided to have their wedding in Dry Creek, where most of Daniel's family still lived. The couple was excited. Dry Creek, despite its eerie reputation, held a special place in Daniel's heart. It was where his roots were, where his ancestors had lived for generations. He wanted his family to be a part of the most important day of his life, and they were thrilled for him. But Daniel had no idea that their perfect wedding would lead to the most terrifying days of his life. The wedding day came, and it was beautiful. The sun shone brightly, and the ceremony went off without a hitch. Family and close friends gathered to celebrate Daniel and Emily's love. After the ceremony, Daniel's family gifted them the old farmhouse, the very one that had been abandoned for years. They figured it would be a perfect place for the newlyweds to spend their first few nights together in peace and quiet. The family spent the day cleaning it up, making it livable for the couple. The house hadn't been used in decades, and everyone knew of the dark rumors that surrounded it. But no one took them seriously anymore. To them, it was just an old, forgotten house. That night, after all the guests had left and the celebrations had died down, Daniel and Emily retired to the farmhouse. The house was quiet, far too quiet for comfort. The creaks and groans of the old wooden floors echoed through the empty halls, making the couple uneasy. But Daniel brushed it off, excited to finally start his life with the woman he loved. As the night wore on, something strange began to happen. Emily, who had been cheerful and full of life just hours ago, seemed distant. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, her face blank. Daniel, concerned, walked over to her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. But the moment he touched her, she violently shoved him away, her face twisted with anger and rage. "Get out of here," she spat at him, her voice cold and venomous. Daniel stumbled back, shocked by her sudden outburst. He didn't understand what was happening. This wasn't the woman he had just married. Emily's eyes were filled with a hatred he had never seen before. Trying to calm her down, Daniel approached her again, but she stood up and stormed into the kitchen. He followed her, but his heart nearly stopped when he saw her pick up a large kitchen knife. Terror gripped him as she turned towards him, her eyes burning with fury. Without thinking, Daniel bolted for the door, slamming it shut behind him and locking it from the outside. He ran to his parents' house, breathless, trying to explain what had just happened. His parents were worried, but his uncle, a practical man, suggested that maybe Emily was experiencing a mental breakdown. They all agreed to go back to the house together. When they arrived at the farmhouse, everything was eerily quiet. They unlocked the door and cautiously stepped inside. As they entered the bedroom, they found Emily sitting in the corner, her back turned to them, muttering something in a strange guttural language none of them could understand. The knife lay on the floor beside her. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what to do. He reached for the knife, but as he picked it up, Emily's head twisted around to face him, her eyes blazing with anger. "If you want to live," she hissed, "get out. She will die." Her voice was not her own. It was deep and menacing, almost inhuman. Terrified, Daniel backed away. His parents tried to talk to her, but she didn't respond. Instead, she let out a low, eerie laugh, her body shaking violently. It was clear that something had taken over her. Daniel's uncle suggested calling a doctor, thinking it might be a psychological issue, but Daniel knew in his gut that this was something far worse. He remembered the stories, the legends of the old farmhouse and the dark presence that was said to live there. He knew they needed help, but not from a doctor. They needed someone who understood the supernatural. There was an old woman in town, Agnes, who was known for her knowledge of the paranormal. She had helped many families over the years with strange occurrences, and Daniel's family decided to call her. When Agnes arrived, she took one look at Emily and knew immediately what was happening. "This house is cursed," she said, her voice grave. "An old demon resides here, one that has been dormant for many years. But now it has awoken and latched onto your wife. It wants to consume her, to make her its bride." Agnes explained that they needed to perform an exorcism as soon as possible, but the ritual couldn't be done in the farmhouse. The demon's power was too strong there. They needed to get Emily out of the house and into a cleansed space before they could begin. But getting her out of the house would be no easy task. The demon had a firm hold on her, and it wasn't going to let her go without a fight. 5 men, including Daniel, stepped forward to help restrain her. As they approached her, Emily began to thrash violently, her strength far beyond that of a normal person. Her eyes rolled back into her head as she let out a guttural scream, her body convulsing as the demon fought to keep control. Suddenly, Emily's body levitated off the bed, floating in midair as the men were thrown across the room by an invisible force. The air grew thick with the stench of sulfur, and the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Time was running out. Agnes quickly began reciting sacred verses, sprinkling holy water around the room. For a moment, the demon seemed to weaken, and the men seized the opportunity to grab Emily and carry her out of the house. She screamed and writhed in their arms, but they managed to get her to a neighboring house that Agnes had cleansed earlier in preparation for the ritual. Once there, Agnes began the exorcism in earnest. The demon, furious at being removed from its home, lashed out, throwing objects across the room and attacking anyone who got too close. The air was thick with tension as the battle between good and evil raged on. Emily's body contorted in unnatural ways, her limbs bending at impossible angles as the demon fought to maintain control. Agnes continued her prayers, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Slowly, the demon's grip began to weaken. With one final blood-curdling scream, the demon was cast out of Emily's body. She collapsed onto the bed, unconscious but alive. The room fell silent. the air no longer heavy with the presence of evil. The nightmare was over. Emily was rushed to the hospital where she spent the next 24 hours in the ICU. Slowly, she began to recover, though she had no memory of what had happened. The demon was gone, and Daniel and Emily were finally free to live their lives in peace. But the people of Dry Creek would never forget the horrors that had taken place in that old farmhouse. The house was abandoned once again, and no one dared to step foot inside. The legend of the haunted farmhouse grew, becoming yet another dark chapter in the town's history. Like and subscribe to our channel for more spine-chilling horror stories.